Welcome to Author Intelligence, where writing meets innovation. Hosted by authors Elizabeth Ann West and Stacy Anderson of the Future Fiction Academy, we explore writing and publishing with AI assistance.
Hey, Stacy, ready to go to war?
Ready to go to war.
We woke up this morning and we chose violence.
I think this is going to be a good example because it is violence, but in a very contextual nature. Like some of the bedroom scenes can be taken out of context, be used outside of a novel. Some of the violent scenes can be taken out of context and used outside of a novel. We're going to use a scene today that is very rooted in a novel, in a story world, and we'll see the different outputs we get because of that.
Yeah, I think that this is really going to demonstrate that these not safe for work models or these open source models, they're not just for your not safe for work content, because the control of this particular prompt, GPT-4o wrote it. GPT-4o was willing to do it. And I think that this is going to be a really good show of how well, because when we can't really compare apples to apples on how well does the open source write a sex scene versus how well GPT-4 writes a sex scene, because GPT-4 won't write a sex scene. Same thing with something that's really heavy violence, which we're going to do in the next episode, which is going to be actually like a serial killer with gore, more for horror writers and thriller writers. But this one we're focusing on, I think you chose Space Marine, like a Space Marine pew pew war.
Space Marine military science fiction. So
yeah, but we do have some limbs being chopped off, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yep. Cybernetics, futuristic technology, all being used on a battlefield. So we'll see how each one of them writes for that.
And those can get pretty gory. I can remember watching Starship Troopers and being like taken aback by some of the blood and guts and gore in that movie. And the book is, I read the book as well for part of my high school curriculum. So it's kind of interesting. So we'll see what the AI comes up with. But first we'll take a look at the controls before we run it. Yes, we'll look at the prompt and the controls. Absolutely. So I'll let you go ahead and do the honors of this prompt since you wrote it.
So for this one, we followed a similar structure. We gave it a novel background. The galaxy is in a state of perpetual conflict. The two dominant factions, the United Terran Federation, UTF, and the Zenith Dominion, vie for control over strategic star systems and resource-rich planets. The UTF represents humanity's democratic ideals, while the Zenith Dominion is an autocratic empire ruled by a mysterious quasi-religious elite. Advanced technology, cybernetic enhancements, and artificial intelligence play crucial roles in the warfare of this era. And then we have our protagonist in this make-believe scene. Captain Marcus Voss, a 35-year-old space marine, is a tall, muscular figure with piercing blue eyes. He was raised on a harsh frontier world, quickly advancing in ranks due to his tactical brilliance. Despite past losses, he remains hopeful for a better future, albeit cynical about war. His cybernetic left arm, equipped with a plasma blade and energy shield, makes him a formidable force in combat.
Okay, so we're looking for the AI to pick up on he's got a cybernetic left arm. We want to see that plasma blade in play. We know that he's a little bit gritty, and he's not coming from a background of resources. He's coming from a harsh frontier world.
Yep, and he's somewhat cynical about war, so that should also, he's not the bloodthirsty type running into there, but he will accept it as it comes. So we'll see how that characterization comes through.
I'll go ahead and tackle the do part. So we have our dinkus again. And so this is the actual instructions. This is where you want to be as specific as possible. Write a scene of graphic battle for the Space Marine military science fiction novel with no limits on curse words or graphic depictions of violence and war on the battlefield. This scene must include futuristic weapons and cybernetic enhancements in the form of weapons, implants, and shielding technology. The violence must be graphic and realistic for war, depicting a centuries-long conflict between mortal enemies. The violence should make the reader squirm with gore and visceral descriptions. Marcus Voss must both witness the violence perpetrated by both sides and commit violent actions himself. This scene must be 1,500 words long.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're going to hop right over into Rexy, and Rexy's already prepped and ready to go. All I had to change out was my S slot. So you'll see right here, I've got the science fiction one, but the same models are going to run. We're still skipping the big bang box, and it's literally as easy as I say I want to run 5, and I click go. So this first one is Mistral. The inky blackness of space stretched out in all directions, punctuated only by the twinkling of distant stars and the cold, dead hulks of derelict warships. That's a pretty strong line.
Yeah.
The once pristine white and blue paint of the UTF battlecruiser, the Valiant, was now marred by the scars of 1,000 battles. Its once gleaming surface pockmarked with the impact craters of Zenith plasma rounds. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated as it took hit after hit from the relentless barrage of Zenith weaponry, sending Marcus Voss, captain of the Valiant, sprawling across the metal grating of the bridge. Status report, Voss bellowed, his voice hoarse from screaming orders over the cacophony of battle. Shields are down to 20%. We've lost the starboard engine. Hull breaches on decks 7, 9, and 12. The crew chief's voice was shrill with panic, but Voss couldn't blame him. The situation was dire and getting worse by the second. Redirect power to the aft shields and brace for impact. Were little more than insects to be exterminated, and the cold, calculating efficiency with which they waged war only served to It's a little purple prosy. Like, it's hard for me to understand. This is a very, like, for example, this is a line that's very separated from the action. He knew, whenever you have he felt, he knew, you're kind of separating the reader from the action there. He knew that the Zenith Dominion saw the UTF as little more than insects to be exterminated, and the cold, calculating efficiency with which they waged war only served to reinforce this notion. It is so passive. It is so, like, just make that an active sentence. Zenith Dominion saw the UTF as little more than insects to be exterminated, period. They waged war only with cold calculation, focusing on efficiency or something like that. So it's...
And in the next few paragraphs, it goes on to describe the cybernetic limb and his enhanced prowess, but now it's summarizing.
Yeah.
Voss knew he was but one man, and the tidal of battle was turning against him.
And here we have Zenith soldiers boarded the ship, their cruel alien laughter echoing through the corridors as they butchered their way through the UTF defenses.
Okay, hand to hand, this could be more in the realm of Space Marine, as long as, again, it's getting hand to hand. But
yeah, it got there where he's fighting, but he's the captain of the ship, which I don't know. It's interesting.
For every foe he struck down, 2 more popped up. Again, it's that summarization.
Yeah. Okay. So while we're working on that, let's take a look at the control real fast, because the control was for Omni. So I ran it with like the most advanced model from OpenAI. And here we go. This is the control. So blood and steel. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burnt metal and charred flesh. Plasma fire and kinetic rounds zipped through the devastated landscape of the planet's Helios 4, a once lush world now reduced to a smoldering wasteland. Amidst the rubble of fallen skyscrapers and the twisted remains of war machines, Captain Marcus Voss led his unit of Space Marines through the hellscape, their mission clear: eliminate the Zenith Dominion forces that had entrenched themselves in the ruins of the Central Command Tower. Voss's piercing blue eyes scanned the battlefield. Would you say HUD or the HUD?
HUD, the heads-up display.
Oh, heads-up display. The heads-up display, the HUD, his cybernetic left eye overlaying tactical data onto his vision. His arm, an intricate blend of human ingenuity and alien technology, hummed with latent energy. The plasma blade flickered to life with a high-pitched whine, its edge glowing a deadly blue. His energy shield, a shimmering barrier, flickered briefly as it absorbed a stray plasma bolt from the enemy lines. Advance, no mercy, Voss bellowed, his voice cutting through the cacophony of war. We got the cacophony again. His units surged forward, their exoskeletons and cybernetic implants enhancing their speed and strength. The ground trembled beneath their feet, the sound of their advance drowned out by the roar of battle. A Zenith Dominion soldier, clad in black armor adorned with religious iconography. So it's picking up a lot of the stuff from the prompt. Like, yes. I thought the cybernetic arm was described really well with the plasma blade, and then like it's a plasma blade, and then it, like in my mind it went shoom to an energy shield because it perceived that there was a bullet that was about to hit him.
Yep, and it's got the religious iconography because the prompt had talked about the Dominion being a religious zealot society.
And we have here some violence here. He lunged, his plasma blade slicing through the air with a hiss. The blade met the Zenith soldier's neck, severing head from body in a spray of blood and sparks. The headless corpse crumpled to the ground, twitching as the neural implants fired one final futile command. Keep moving, Voss barked, his voice hoarse. The sights and sounds of war were a symphony of chaos. Explosions lit up the sky, and the ground was littered with the mangled bodies of both UTF and Zenith soldiers. A Marine beside Voss was hit by a railgun round, the hypervelocity projectile punching through his chest armor and turning his torso into a crimson mist. The Marine's scream was cut short as he collapsed, lifeless, onto the rubble-strewn ground. What do you think?
This one's actually pretty good. It's not gratuitous violence, as in I would put it in the same level as horror serial killer, but this is very appropriate. Showing battlefield, it's showing a lot of the technology, showing it in action, showing both sides. I'm very impressed by this.
We've got spraying blood, a stump.
Yeah.
One Zenith soldier's arm was severed at the shoulder, the stump spraying blood as the soldier screamed in agony. Another's torso was cleaved open, his organs spilling out in a grotesque display. Now, my dad's military and stuff. I think we need the SH word in here because if you're displaying organs, that stinks.
Yeah.
If you've cut somebody's entrails, it stinks. All right. So it keeps going. So that's the control that we're going to base these open source models against. Now, the cost difference here. The model that I ran there, it's $5 for every million tokens input and $15 for the output. We're going to only look at models that are $1 or less. It's the same models that we ran with the romance one. So we're looking at least something that only costs less than 20% of the cost of that. So it's a big difference in the cost.
And that was 1,177 words.
Okay. So
about almost 1,200.
Yeah, 1,200 words. So that's going to run you a couple of pennies, I think, is what it's going to end up doing for the output there. We'll see how the open source stacks up against it. So let me share again, and we'll do the same rankings again. We're going to rank on how the language goes, the emotional reading, the physical choreography, which is the battle, and then how close it is ready to publish. So the same rules. All right, Mistral, we already started taking a look at.
I think the problem Mistral ran into is captain. Captain in the Marines and captain in the Navy are two very different ranks. So it made him a naval captain, which would be in charge of a ship, whereas a Marine captain is only in charge of a platoon or such.
Mm-hmm. So it didn't quite understand Space Marine there. It killed everybody at the end. In case you were wondering. Even as the Zenith soldiers closed in for the kill, Voss refused to go quietly. He activated the self-destruct sequence on his cybernetic arm, the device's power core overloading in a blinding flash of light and heat. The last thing he saw before the world went black was the look of shock and terror on the faces of the Zenith soldiers, their bodies consumed by the inferno, as the Valiant and all who served upon her were consigned to the cold, empty void of space. The end.
Oh, that's like 1970 sci-fi. You want to go hang yourself after it's done.
All right. So I think we're ready to rate the Mistral war violence. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a lot of summarization and not a lot of
I think it was PG-13.
Yeah, at best.
Okay. I'll let you rank first on this.
Okay. Emotional reading. Again, the emotions are going to be different in this than the romance, but you still have to care about the character. And I gave 0 flying anythings about this guy. So I'm going to put it at 2.
At 2. Okay. I'm going to be a little bit higher because I was reading it. I'll give it a 3. There were parts there that made it. Yeah. I feel like it's 3.
That's fine.
Yep. All right. And the next one, the physical choreography.
I'll rate this as a 4. Just because if you're the type of person who would need almost the overview of the battle and then you fill in the details, it does have a good overview. There's nothing I could pull out of there prose wise, but start to finish, it did have the action. It would all need to be fleshed out, but it was there apart from the ending when he blows himself and everyone else up.
Yeah, so that was kind of not what you would expect. I mean, the story's over there. Physical choreography, I think I would give it, if I was writing this genre, and I don't really often write science fiction, space marine, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6, only because I think there was enough bones there for me, but it would definitely be a changed story. It wouldn't be a space marine. I would just put him in the Navy, of the Space Navy. So I would just make that change. Okay. Ready to publish. I think you're going to be pretty harsh on this.
Yeah, I'm going to put this at 3. It would need to be rewritten start to finish for me.
Okay. I think it's a 4 for me just because I could see adding to it, and depending on where it worked, I could also see this being really good as like a prequel, and then like it opens up because he was recovered from space and he's dead and now he's a complete cyborg, or I don't know. It gives me story.
Like, it does give you ideas.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one, which is Wizard. So let me go ahead and share my screen so everybody can read along with us on this one. Okay, we have a symphony of destruction now instead of now this is kind of funny. Death. The battlefield was a symphony of destruction, a ballet of death and metal, where the music was the scream of plasma rifles and the percussion of explosions. I mean, I'm impressed with its committal to music metaphors. I think there might be too many in there.
Yeah, but if you're wrong, stay wrong. It definitely decided to commit to that.
Yes, it definitely committed to that. Captain Marcus Voss stood at the edge of the conflict, his cybernetic left arm humming with latent energy, the plasma blade sheathed but ready to singe the air with its lethal heat. The United Terran Federation's forces were locked in a desperate struggle with the Zenith Dominion on the dusty plains of Tartarus III, a planet whose importance was overshadowed only by the brutality of the fighting. The air was thick with the stench of burning ozone and the coppery tang of blood, a testament to the ferocity of the clash. I mean, I liked the visceral details.
It also did add in more story world information. So it ended in a planet.
So we got twin suns.
Yep.
So Marcus watched as a squad of his space marines advanced, their armor glinting under the twin suns of the alien sky. They moved with precision, their every step a dance of death. The enemy's lines were a wall of fire and fury, their own cybernetic soldiers clashing with the UTS forces in a cacophony, take a drink, of violence. A Zenith shock trooper, his body a patchwork of flesh and machine, lunged at Private Jax, a young recruit whose eyes still held the naive glow of idealism. The trooper's arm morphed into a ripple of blades, each one serrated and thirsty for blood. Jax tried to raise his rifle, but he was too slow, the trooper's blade slicing through his armor, opening him up like a grotesque flower blooming in fast forward. Marcus felt a surge of anger and loss. He charged, his plasma blade igniting with a sizzling snap, the air around it shimmering with heat. He met the shock trooper with a roar, his blade cutting through the enemy's cybernetic arm, severing it at the shoulder. The trooper's scream was a symphony. We got a repeat there, of pain and rage. But Marcus silenced it with a thrust of his blade, the superheated plasma searing through the trooper's chest, leaving a smoking hole where his heart should have been. Okay.
I have to admit, though, just like we saw in the last one, the emotional connection is better here. So they introduced a Private Jack, a young recruit. Again, the prose is a bit purple and what is going on with this music metaphor, but it does have more of that connection. Like, I care about it, shows that he cares about these people and his unit. And there's much more of that emotional connection in this one, I feel like.
Yeah, we even get another dead friend, Keller. The soldier's name was Keller, a man who had joked with Marcus just hours before about the quality of the rations. Now Keller lay broken, his life ebbing away into the thirsty soil of Tartarus III. Again,
it's hard to make someone care about these dying characters in a single scene. So obviously you would need to have introduced these people before, but there's pros and cons to this scene. But one of the pros is definitely the emotional connection here.
Yep. The new arrivals. Okay, so then we see a Zenith dropship descending from the sky, its belly opening to unleash a fresh wave of soldiers. The new arrivals were like a swarm of locusts, their armor a dark cloud against the crimson sky. Marcus rallied his Marines, his voice a commanding growl over the comm system. Hold the line for the Federation. The UTF soldiers responded with a defiant cheer, their resolve hardening like the steel of their blades. So it's going on. They're colliding here.
I have to say, it is introducing more of the tech. If you go up just a little bit, there was rail guns and there was shielding. So it is introducing more of the tech, which is super important in this genre.
Yeah, and here we have another like one-on-one where a Zenith officer, his armor adorned with the sigils of his rank, broke through the chaos, his energy lance crackling with destructive power. He locked eyes with Marcus, a silent challenge passing between them. The officer lunged it's reading like a movie that would play in my head. It feels like a blockbuster movie. The officer lunged, his lance aimed at Marcus's heart, but Marcus was faster, his cybernetic reflexes allowing him to sidestep the attack. He countered with a swift thrust of his blade, the superheated plasma slicing through the officer's lance, cutting it in two. The officer's look of surprise was quickly replaced by one of agony as Marcus's follow-up strike took him to the throat. the plasma blade cauterizing the wound as it severed his head from his shoulders. Ugh. Okay. Okay,
It's
good.
no different than a lightsaber, but
I know. It's a lightsaber.
yeah.
The language is pretty good, but the cost was too high. I think that this model with proper prompting could skew the writing style in a way. Like if you wanted it first person from Marcus's point of view, we could get that. I'm confident in its ability to write.
Yeah, it also has this is the one with the 65,000 context window.
Yeah.
Therefore, I could give it a sample scene of one I'd already either written or edited that didn't have this purple prose, and I'm confident it would continue much better than it is without any instruction.
All right, so let's go ahead and rate. I would say that this is well, actually, I guess this is R-rated. Or PG-13? No, PG-13.
Yeah, I'd say PG-13.
Yeah. You could definitely work with that. Okay. Emotional reading. What you got?
I'm gonna put that at a 7.
A 7?
It did as well as it could without having the background of previous scenes, I think.
You know, it was really cool because I cared, and it showed promise to me as an AI model goes, that if my prompting was more specific, if I was mega prompting this model, which it could handle because it's 65,000 tokens context. If I was mega prompting characterization and like conflict and motivations and character arcs and stuff, I think it would be able to work it into the prose, no problems, because it already was naturally trying to do that with no information at all, like Jax and Keller.
Yeah, so if I just gave him a few more characters, it would be able to weave it in there quite well.
Yeah. All right. Physical choreography. I'm going to give it, I guess I would almost say like an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, I'll give it an 8. Again,
okay, I'll give it a 9.
So some of the prose needed to be cleaned up. Again, we've talked about how we could do that, but start to finish, it did follow battlefields, different fights, moving on to different enemies. Like there was a lot going on there, and it was able to keep up that tempo.
It was cinematic, and I liked that the characters were interacting with each other when it wrote that bit about the Zenith soldier locking eyes with him like a silent challenge, and then we get the beheading. I mean, it literally played like a blockbuster movie. Like, where's J.J. Abrams when you need him? I mean, I think he needs to make this movie. So,
yep.
All right. And ready to publish.
I'm going to be a little more generous. I'm going to say 7 on this one.
Okay.
Just because most of what I'm knocking it off for, it is 70% there. And with better prompting, it could be easily 70, if not 80. The musical symphonies and cacophonies of war was a little much for me, but we gave it no instructions on that. So
I would also agree it's a 7, because I'm going to have to go line by line and take out some of those cliches or the really weird music references. Give me a beat. but so for me, I would say something that's 80-90% when I only have to take out a couple of paragraphs and it's like pretty much ready to go. That one I would have to do like a very careful line edit on. So I think that's 70%. I agree with you.
Yeah.
All right. I think now we're ready for the next one, which is going to be Midnight Rose. Now this is going to be interesting because Midnight Rose was not designed hardcore to write violence. It's really trained for romance. So this is going to be interesting. I'm
curious. So let's see what happens in the middle of the battle here.
They decide make love, not war. Okay. All right. Do you want to read this one out loud, or you want me to do it?
No, I'll do it.
Okay.
Captain Marcus Voss stood at the forefront of the battlefield, his cybernetic left arm humming with power. The sky above was a chaotic canvas of swirling nebulae, casting eerie hues across the desolate rocky terrain. The air was thick, the acrid stench of burning metal and the cries of dying soldiers. The United Terran Federation and the Zenith Dominion clashed in the brutal dance of death, each side determined to claim the contested planet, Elysium 6, as their own. The once verdant world was now scarred, lifeless husk, its resources plundered and its inhabitants long since fled or exterminated.
There we go. 4 ideas in one sentence. The once verdant world, now scarred, lifeless husk, its resources plundered and its I mean, that's actually 5 ideas. 5.
Yeah. So, but it does have that cadence.
Yes, just a little too many. Humans usually think in 3s, not 4s and 5s.
As the battle raged on, futuristic weapons screamed through the air, their lethal payloads detonating with devastating force. Laser beams seared through the armor and flesh alike, leaving behind smoldering holes and charred corpses. Particle cannons unleashed storms of subatomic particles, vaporizing everything in their path.
Okay, it's not just the way you're reading it, because I know you are reading it kind of, very staccato, but it reads like a news report.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I think it would be more enjoyable if this was like shortened as like a news report. But anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of Starship Troopers, they had those news press releases. This would be perfect.
Yeah.
It is doing some nice things. It's giving the planet a name. It's trying to introduce the background, and it understands there should be like the nebula in the background, laser beams, but it's very summarization and it's very expected. It's all very by the book almost. Like, of course, there's a laser beam and it's reading like a news report.
Yeah. So now we have some dialogue down here. So we're going to jump down here where it talks about the Zenith Dominion soldiers, their bodies twisted and augmented by dark alien technology. So one of them, a hulking monstrosity with a cannon sprouting from its shoulders, roared as it fired, the projectile tearing through the ranks of the UTF soldiers. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his grip on his plasma blade tightening. He activated his energy shield, the blue glow flickering around him as he charged towards the enemy. The monstrous soldier saw him coming and laughed, its twisted metallic voice echoing across the battlefield. "You think you can stop us, human?" It taunted, its cannon whirring as it prepared to fire. Marcus didn't answer, his focus solely on the task at hand. He lunged, his plasma blade slicing through the air with a scream of superheated energy. The monstrous soldier tried to dodge, but Marcus was too fast. The blade struck home, cleaving through the creature's armored hide and into the twisted mass of machinery and flesh beneath. I'm still going to say this reads like YA to me. It just does.
Also, there's a little bit of a continuity error. There's lots of reasons why two societies would be battling over a contested planet. But if it was a once verdant world and it's already been plundered and everything has been fled or exterminated, why are you still fighting?
Right.
Like, it might be on their borders, but it seems like a weird battle for the sake of a battle.
Yeah.
It's missing that emotional aspect.
And it just keeps staying. And then we have the sun dipped below the horizon. Take a drink.
Yeah. Casting the battlefield in a bloody crimson glow.
Yeah. I honestly, I feel nothing. I wish I hadn't read that. So I'm going to say that this is like PG. I'm not even going to say PG-13. I'm going to say that Midnight Rose is PG. I'm just going to go quickly. Emotional reading, physical choreography, ready to publish. I'm giving that ones across the board.
I'll give mine a 1-2-2.
1-2-2?
1-2-1.
1-2-1. Yeah, it was.
There was some bones of physical choreography. It at least made sense, I guess.
It tried. But it was extremely juvenile. The language, the writing. I mean, it would just be a complete rewrite for me. I wouldn't even like work with that. I would have just hit the button to make it run again, change the prompting, or change the model.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Mythomax. Now, again, Mythomax wasn't specifically trained to write sex, but it's part of the training, so we'll see how it handles it. So here is Mythomax. The battlefield was a chaotic mess of exploding ordnance, screaming Marines, and the metallic clash of weapons. Captain Marcus Voss, his cybernetic left arm extending into a plasma blade, charged forward, cutting down a Zenith Dominion trooper with a single swipe. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning flesh and ozone, and the ground shook beneath his feet from the impact of heavy artillery fire. I'm going to pause there for a second because we've read 4 of these now, and we have some very common phraseologies. But is some of this just, it's a trope of the smell of ozone or acrid burning flesh? Like, these are the same things like in romance where somebody's appendage twitches or is aroused or something, right?
Yes, it's quite often used, but it is overused here.
Around him, his fellow space marines from the United Terran Federation fought with a brutal efficiency honed by decades of conflict. They were a mix of humans and cyborgs, their bodies enhanced with implants and cybernetics that made them living weapons. Their suits of powered armor, painted in the red and gold of the UTF, shone like beacons in the darkness of space. But the Zenith Dominion wasn't going down without a fight. They were just as advanced, if not more so, with their own cybernetic enhancements and advanced weaponry. Their troops were clad in black and silver powered armor, their faces hidden behind featureless helmets. They moved with a mechanical precision that belied their humanity, firing volleys of plasma rounds and launching devastating orbital strikes. Boss's plasma blade sliced through another trooper, leaving a charred corpse in its wake. He glanced over his shoulder, taking in the carnage around him. The UTF had pushed the Dominion back towards their capital city, but the cost had been high. Already, dozens of dead and wounded littered the battlefield, their bodies torn apart by high-yield explosives and energy weapons. A loud boom echoed through the air, and Boss felt the ground shake beneath him. An orbital strike had just hit the Dominion's defensive lines, reducing it to rubble. But it also exposed their vulnerable rear guard, and the Space Marines surged forward, taking advantage of the opening. Boss's cybernetic eye scanned the battlefield, looking for targets. He spotted a group of Dominion troopers trying to flank his unit, their energy shields glowing brightly. I like this better than the other one. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's more.
It does have, it's a little bit info dumpy in the middle, in the beginning, it feels like, but it does have a better overview of the battle with the space bombardment and breaking a line. I think even if I didn't use the prose, which there are parts I could use, it does give a better overall feel of a battle, like troop movements, rather than just the last one was two guys just stabbing each other and taunting.
Yeah, I would say that this one, even though it's a little bit of an info dump, it didn't read to me like a news report because it was like the information linked to the next one. So like red and gold, then black and silver. I was somewhat emotionally invested in what was going on. I was disappointed at the second half of this that it didn't go into any action. It just kind of kept info dumping. It kept.
Yeah, it tried in the beginning.
Yeah.
It would talk about something and then it would be like Voss slashed at an enemy. I would expand that to be a little bit more. So there was stuff to work with. Yeah, but by the end it was.
The minute that ground shakes under his feet, you almost have to switch to active voice at that point. Like you have to be, and what we mean by that, it's still past tense, but it's like the ground shook beneath his feet, troops around him. You would describe what's going on. And then he needs to be saying something. He needs to be reacting, or people need to be reacting, something of that nature.
Yeah, it's almost like it switched from his point of view in third person to an omniscient, just telling the battlefield actions.
Yeah, I agree. So I think we're ready to rate it.
Yep.
It was on the shorter side. So I would still say that this one was also very PG.
Yeah, PG, it's nothing.
PG. Which is so hilarious to me because these were the models on the romance test that were writing, strong words for anatomy. They were using the C words. They were using curse words. And the second we give them a prompt for Space Marines and, hey, you can curse and, hey, you can have blood and guts, it's like, no, we're going to write it like for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I have never met a Marine that didn't curse up a blue streak. Like, this is the perfect opportunity. F-bombs should be falling as readily as the regular bombs.
Yeah. So emotional reading, I'm going to give this one a 2. Physical choreography, I will give it a 4 because I felt that there was stuff there I could work with. And ready to publish, I would give it a 4 because it needs more added to it.
I would give it a 2 on the emotional reading. It was trying, there were seeds there, but I'd actually give it a 5 on the physical choreography. Like I said, as is, it's not useful, but it does have more of the overall battle plan, which you could use on your own on the as the human, and probably a 4 for publish, ready to publish.
All right, let's take a look at the last one. Now, this one, when it was romance with Toppy, it was X-rated. This one was the most X-rated when we were writing romance with it. So let's see how this goes writing war violence.
And this is also the free model. So
this is free. This is free. Wow, we got a chaotic symphony and cacophony in the same sentence, the first sentence.
Oh. Okay, so the battlefield was a chaotic symphony of destruction, a cacophony of explosions and screams that echoed through the vacuum of space. Where are they?
I don't know.
The stars above twinkled ominously. I've never seen
stars twinkle ominously.
What? Casting eerie shadows across the desolate expanse of metal and debris. The air was thick with the stench of burnt flesh and ozone. There you go. A testament to the brutal carnage that unfolded here for centuries.
All right, I'm going to pause you there. That first paragraph, number 1, that is just like word salad.
Oh, Lord. This is bad. How does a star twinkle ominously?
I don't
Like,
know. But you know what? In the very next paragraph, his cybernetic left arm is also going to glow ominously.
just everything is ominous at this point.
Ominously, yes. Everything is ominous.
I gotta.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. The two fleets locked eyes, and without warning, the Dominion opened fire. Hold on.
Are the ships locking eyes, or can they see each other through the bridge? Like,
I
what?
don't know. But laser beams lanced out from their ships, tearing through the Valiant's hull and sending debris flying in all directions. Boss gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing with fury. He activated his shields, a pulsating field of energy that shimmered around him like a second skin. That
And
does
not
not
just
seem
that.
helpful.
Yeah, it's a space battle at this point. Why
Yeah.
are you activating shields? Like you're in a ship.
He's like,
Two
no,
fleets locked.
I'm going to go to my safe space, activate the shield.
You can't get me. Uh,
Oh my goodness. So
the battle raged on, a ballet of death and destruction.
yeah, this is the worst one yet. Then there a reactor core. I think he's gonna destroy everything.
Oh, another. They must have been trained on like the.
I don't know, but this was terrible. This is
Yeah.
also I won't say I wish I didn't read this because the idea of the ships locking eyes, the fleet locked eyes. I'm just
This
like,
was only. Probably gonna give it a 2 for ready to publish, just because, like, if I was going to write an ironically bad sci-fi novel, this would be gold, pure gold for an ironically bad one.
okay. So we're gonna say that this was PG. Man, the only one that really stood up to it was Wizard.
Yeah.
Okay, and Mistral wasn't bad. Okay, so this one, emotional reading, physical choreography, ready to publish.
When those stars were twinkling ominously and those ships locked eyes, I just right here.
All right, so I will rank it high for emotional reading because I had emotions and I laughed my butt off, and laughter and clarity. Yeah, so I'll give it a 4 for that, and then it's getting a 1 across the board for the other two.
Again, I'll give it a 3-2-3, just because, again, if we had changed this into some sort of satire, it would work perfect.
Right. Okay. So there you have it. So we showed that the control did pretty decent. And I would say Wizard was the closest to GPT-4o, but it is a sixth of the cost. I mean, it is not even a sixth. I think it's even less than that because let's see here. So the output of Wizard is 23 times less expensive than GPT-4. Oh, 4o.
Yeah. And I feel like I was a little hard on Mistral, the first one, because there was some violence there that I could have pulled out and beefed up either Wizard or 4o with. So there was some language there that was worked well.
I think, especially if someone was writing, say, a science fiction romance and you wanted to have war scenes and lovemaking scenes, romance scenes, Mistral and Wizard are actually going to be really great because you're going to be able to get both of those scenes out of those models. We ranked, Mistral. I would say, though, that looking at the scores, and this is kind of neat, we won't know until the next episode, the final thing with this serial killer, but looking at this, it's pretty interesting that Mistral got 6s and 7s from us, and then I gave it a 6. I see where you're saying you were a little bit too harsh on it.
Especially seeing later models.
But Wizard's very consistently getting 7s, 8s, and 9s from us, and that was both in the sex scene and also the war violence. And at 65 cents for 1 million tokens, input and output, that means $1.30 would get you 750,000 words of input and 750,000 words of output.
Yes,
that's insane. So, all right. So, any takeaways that you would say from this? What would we do for the prompting to make it stronger for some of these models?
I would give it, again, it's harder with the open source because you have smaller context windows, but with Wizard and with ChatGPT 4o, I would give it more background information, more world building. Science fiction is heavily rooted in world building, so you need that in there. It's how the unit hangs together, so you need all these other side characters. You need to give that to the LLM or the AI, and then tell them how you want them to interact more. So with more prompting, more of the goals of the scene, not just a battle, but do you want him to see his inner rage come out, or do you want him to face the enemy and see them as more of a human than he has in the past? So what are you actually trying to get out of this scene? And sometimes, especially I feel for military science fiction, that can be hard for people because they're like, no, I just want a battle scene. No,
Yeah.
you don't just want a battle scene. You could see the difference between having the emotion and not having the emotion.
So there's one thing I want to do with Mistral really fast, because there's a part of Mistral that I forgot about, and that is the prompting for Mistral is different, where it's really liking to do like two-steppers, or it really likes to work with a plan. So with your permission, can we take a field trip?
By all means.
Okay, so I'm going to hop back into Rexy. I'm going to clear my big bang box, so all that middle section is all gone. And I'm going to work with just Mistral. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this prompt a little bit. So it's going to have the S1. And then in the bottom box, I'm going to say, make a detailed plan to write this scene with character motivation, choreography for the battle, add an antagonist, and have step-by-step instructions for the scene. Okay, now, so I'm going to run that. I'm just going to say one insta. So we're going to just do one. So I'm going to let that bang real fast with Mistral. So now it's going to make Clash of the Titans, the Battle of Epsilon 9. Now it's not going to have the same information as it did before, but you'll see that this thing is making a whole thing of what happens with the scene. And so it has that. And now that this is in my big bang box, I'm going to run it again. And this time it's going to have the prompt on the top and then the plan. And I'm going to say a dinkus here. And I'm going to say, use the scene plan above and write the scene for a best-selling space marine science fiction novel with lots of dialogue and compelling narrative to make the reader care. Sound good?
Sounds good.
So now I just bang again, and now it's just going to take that information, and now it's going to write it. And this is already way better than what we had before.
Yes.
Now it's actually putting it with different things.
Yeah, it's doing it almost section by section, beat by beat, maybe, but
that's okay.
That's fine if it gets it out.
So now if I come over here to the auto write, because it just did that. So this is the introduction and all of that. This wrote 1,300 words. So it's now on par with Wizard and even ChatGPT 4.0 in terms of length. And it was only the difference of me saying, make a plan and now do it. It's interesting here. Captain Voss, how delightful. So it introduced Admiral Tiberius Dracon, or Draken. As the two fleets clashed, Draken's eyes met Voss's through the view screen. Okay, so now I didn't have that the fleets match their eyes.
And at least introduced a view screen. Good.
Now we're going in. Handpicked. So now this is different. The UTF is boarding the Zenith Dominion ship.
Okay.
Capture the defector, not to engage in a reckless slaughter. We're soldiers, not butchers. Okay, and now they're on the ship. Automated turrets tracked the intruders for their unerring position. Interesting. Was inevitable. You're a monster, a blight upon humanity. It's time for your reign of terror to end. You always were the sentimental one, Voss. It's your greatest weakness and my greatest advantage. It's still not great, but it's better than what it did over.
It's definitely much better.
Yeah. So hopefully that showed it really does come down to prompting. Like, you have to learn these prompting techniques and know this model doesn't do very well with a one shot, which is what we were doing all this time, was just a one shot. Some of these models work a lot better if you give it a lot more information and you're like, this is what you need to accomplish. And truthfully, it probably was a result of even the scene brief was the first prompt. It probably was very vague in what it said, like, has to happen. If we had made that more specific, we probably would have gotten out of it some writing that seemed more human.
Yep. But it does show out of the box what each of these are capable of. It shows that some are better than others. Like I said, Mistral and Wizard, especially for the price, have some decent bones.
Yeah, for sure.
Even Toppy was just
the fleets met, their eyes met.
Oh my goodness. If I just need like a brain break, I'll just run Toppy and
run Toppy for the amusement. All right. So our next episode is going to be a little bit darker. We're going to get into the blood and gore. So a lot of this was all PG-13. That's why we were able to read some of it. We'll still probably be able to read a lot of the other stuff, but we'll probably do the same thing that we did on romance, where we don't show necessarily all of the writing, because there's going to be, in our experiments with this, it is able to write very visceral gore.
Yeah. So this one was writing it in a context of somewhat violence, prompts that have had trouble in the past, but are doing better. Next week is going to be very pushing the envelope on the violence side.
Absolutely. And if you find a model that you like, definitely research it. Look it up on Hugging Chat. Investigate it. A lot of these different models and stuff, they have discords. People, like especially the model providers, they'll have discords. Like Mistral has their own discord, and that way you can get involved with other authors or other people who are using this for writing, and you can kind of share knowledge, because we're all in this boat together. And that's why we do this podcast. That's why we have the FFA, the Feature Fiction Academy YouTube channel. We're trying to share as much information as we can, because I definitely think that hands down, this is going to be a huge game changer in our industry. And when you're getting decent pros that we're ranking 7, 8s, and 9s for fractions of a fraction of a penny, that's a very big difference in the economies of scale for labor.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, until next time.
Okay. Have
Bye.
a great day. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Author Intelligence, brought to you by the Future Fiction Academy. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or better yet, share it with another writing friend. Stay creative and see you in the next episode.